The engine sputtered, a final rattling cough that died in the middle of the road. Mr. Ali's brow furrowed. He twisted the key again, the starter whining uselessly. Oh no, not now. He gripped the steering wheel, his gaze fixed on the road ahead, now stretching emptily before him. He was supposed to be at the community center. He pushed open the car door, the hinges protesting with a rusty groan. The sun beat down on the asphalt, the heat radiating upwards in shimmering waves. He began walking, his steps slow and deliberate. He spotted a group of young men in bright uniforms standing near a food stall, laughing and chatting. "Excuse me." Mr. Ali's voice was a little rough, unused to calling out. The young men paused their conversation, turning to him with expressions that ranged from mild curiosity to thinly veiled annoyance. "Yes?" one of them asked, his tone flat. "My car. It's broken down, just back there." Mr. Ali gestured behind him, his hand moving with a slight tremor. "I was hoping perhaps you could direct me to someone who might be able to assist. A mechanic, maybe?" The young men exchanged glances. One of them, the tallest, spoke. "Broken down? Here?" He looked in the direction Mr. Ali had indicated, his eyes narrowing slightly. "That's not really our concern. But I'm stranded." Mr. Ali's voice was calm, but a hint of desperation crept in. "I need to get to the community center. It's important." Another young man spoke, his voice dismissive. "Look, we're on duty here. We can't leave our post to help with car trouble. You'll have to call someone." I don't have a phone," Mr. Ali admitted quietly, his shoulders slumping slightly. He hadn't needed one for years. The first young man sighed, a sound of exaggerated patience. "Well, that's unfortunate, but still not our problem. You'll have to figure something out." He turned back to his companions, resuming their conversation as if Mr. Ali had ceased to exist. Mr. Ali stood for a moment, the words echoing in the space between them. Not our problem. He looked back at his car, a familiar and faithful companion now stubbornly silent. He felt a pang of helplessness, a sense of being overlooked and dismissed. He turned and began walking again, the community center seeming impossibly distant. He decided to wait, settling onto a nearby bench. People walked past, their faces a blur of indifference. Some glanced at him, at his stopped vehicle, their expressions ranging from mild curiosity to thinly veiled annoyance. A few whispered, their words indistinct, but their tone clear. He watched them, his thoughts drifting. He thought about the journey he was supposed to be on, the memories attached to his car, the faces he hoped to see. A pang of loneliness tightened his chest. A group of younger individuals gathered nearby, their voices loud and careless. One of them pointed at his car, a phone raised. Laughter rippled through the group, sharp and dismissive. He heard fragments of their conversation, words like old-timer and relic. He closed his eyes for a moment, the sounds of their mockery washing over him. He remained still, his hands clasped firmly in his lap. He felt a flush of embarrassment, a sense of being a spectacle, but he didn't react. Time passed, marked only by the shifting shadows and the increasing flow of people. No one offered help. He tried to flag down a passing vehicle, but they sped past, their drivers seemingly oblivious. A sense of isolation began to creep in. A figure in a uniform approached, their stride purposeful. "Sir," the voice was firm, official. "Your vehicle is obstructing traffic flow. You need to move it." "I understand," he replied, his voice calm. "But it won't move. It's broken down." "We have regulations to consider," the figure said, their tone hardening slightly. "We can't have abandoned vehicles on the premises. It's a liability." "It's not abandoned," he said quietly. "I'm waiting for assistance." "We've given you ample opportunity," the figure said, their voice now edged with impatience. "If it's not moved within the hour, we'll have it towed, at your expense." He looked at the figure, at the unyielding set of their jaw. He saw no empathy, only the coldness of rules and regulations. He nodded slowly, accepting the ultimatum. He was running out of options. Then a different sound cut through the noise, a low rumble, deep and resonant, growing steadily louder. It was a sound that spoke of power, of controlled movement. Heads turned, faces shifting from annoyance to curiosity. A procession of vehicles appeared. They were not ordinary. Large, dark shapes, moving with a synchronized precision that drew every eye. The flow of traffic parted, yielding to their advance. The vehicles came to a halt. Their presence commanded attention, silencing the earlier chatter and mockery. The figures who had been so dismissive now stood frozen, their expressions a mixture of confusion and apprehension. From the lead vehicle, a figure emerged, tall, bearing an air of authority that transcended the ordinary. Their posture was erect, their gaze sharp and direct. The figure surveyed the scene. Their eyes swept across the onlookers, the figures in uniforms, and finally settled on him, on his silent vehicle. A flicker of recognition passed across their face. The figure spoke, their voice clear and carrying. That vehicle, the one that belongs to... The question hung in the air, drawing all attention. The figures who had been so quick to dismiss his problem exchanged uneasy glances. The words, "not our problem," seemed to hang unspoken between them, now hollow and meaningless. The figure began to move towards him, their stride purposeful and unwavering. The onlookers, who had been so eager to judge and dismiss, now watched in stunned silence. The air crackled with a tension that was not hostile, but profound. He straightened, a sense of something unexpected unfolding. The events of the past hour seemed to recede, replaced by a growing awareness of a shift in the balance. The arrival of these vehicles, the question asked, had changed everything. The figure's presence, the sound of the engines, the sudden hush of the crowd, all spoke of a connection, a purpose that went far beyond a simple breakdown. The figure approached, their gaze steady. "It's you," they said, their voice carrying a weight of respect. "I haven't seen that vehicle in years." "It's still going," he replied, his voice a little stronger now. "Just needed a little... assistance." "This vehicle," the figure said, addressing those who were now watching with a mixture of awe and embarrassment, "has history. It carried more than just cargo." The figures who had been so dismissive shifted uneasily. The words they had spoken earlier now hung heavily in the air, a stark contrast to the tone of respect. "It brought them home," the figure continued, their gaze returning to him, "when others couldn't, through conditions they wouldn't believe." A murmur rippled through the onlookers. The group who had been mocking him now stood silent, their earlier amusement replaced with a dawning understanding. "See to it," the figure commanded, their voice leaving no room for argument. "See to it that it's made ready. Immediately." Figures moved with purpose, their earlier reluctance replaced by a swift efficiency. The air crackled with a sense of urgent action, a stark contrast to the earlier indifference. "And ensure," the figure added, their gaze sweeping across the faces of those who had been so quick to judge, "that he reaches his destination, with all due consideration." He nodded, a quiet acknowledgement of the assistance. His focus remained on his original purpose, the journey he had been so determined to complete. The figure turned, their bearing commanding respect. The vehicles, once a source of mystery, now stood as a symbol of something larger, something that transcended the ordinary. The onlookers watched as the vehicle was made ready, their expressions a mix of apology and newfound respect. The initial dismissal had been replaced by an awareness of something missed, something profound. He resumed his journey, the events of the past hour fading into the background, replaced by a quiet sense of resolution. The destination awaited, the purpose fulfilled.